The chapel fell still the moment my mother's voice broke the quiet. You had adopted a new name. No surprise, no judgment, just every eye snapping toward me. My father's grip on the program tightened. My brother paused mid-laugh in the doorway. I slid into the second row, the page warm in my hand, my chosen name printed in a black that felt purposeful. The seat beside me, marked for family, remained vacant, just like the milestones they had always missed. But looking at the empty space, something shifted. They believed my silence exposed me. In reality, it revealed them. I had grown up learning to minimize myself among louder voices. In our Austin home, the more noise you made, the more weight your presence carried, and significance never fell to me. I remember my mother's heels clacking across the tile whenever Brendan needed attention. Loud, sharp, urgent, while my own quiet needs were invisible. Vivian always received the soft tone, the gentle touch, the lingering focus that made the room orbit around her. I was the silent one, left to tidy my own messes, pack my own lunches, and learn that my voice was a river flowing under the floorboards unnoticed. I first recognized the pattern at 12, at Vivian's school art exhibition. Painted canvases lined the gym wall. My mother hovered over her, smiling for neighbors, brushing away imagined specks of dust. I lingered in a corner, clutching a certificate I'd earned earlier that morning for a regional science competition. No one came for me. Mom handed me Vivian's jacket without a glance, as if I were part of the wallpaper. I tucked the certificate into my pocket, the crinkle of the paper echoing unheard. High school graduation didn't change anything. My family arrived late, after the ceremony had begun. When my name was called, I scanned the crowd for the 4 chairs that mattered. Only one was empty, mine. They had stopped for coffee on the way, I later discovered. My grip on the program left a small tear at the corner. I swallowed the ache and sat slowly, hoping measured movements could disguise the void. College offered no reprieve. At Rice, I reminded them weeks in advance of an awards ceremony. Vivian sent a heart emoji. Brendan read my text and said nothing. My parents replied days later with a dismissive, "Well, try." They didn't show. That evening, I ate alone on the dorm steps, my award beside me in the unopened envelope. The years taught me silence. Every attempt to assert myself was met with my mother's familiar rebuke. "Don't be dramatic, Evelyn." My father nodded along without raising his eyes from his phone. Over time, I stopped protesting. My voice shrank into nothingness. One memory remained sharp. Presenting my early research on desalination. 5 family seats reserved, all empty. I held the program in my hand, smoothing the same crease, pretending the gap wasn't there. A text arrived. A photo of Brendan at a backyard barbecue. "Wish you were here," he wrote. He didn't mean it. That day I learned my place. At the margins of their lives, only recognized when I stayed silent. The change didn't happen in an instant. It built quietly, like pressure against a door held shut for years. The day it finally opened was ordinary, almost unremarkable. 8 months before my dissertation defense, I sent a formal announcement to my family. Clear, precise, printed in sharp black ink. I mailed it, texted reminders, added it to the family group chat. April 22nd, 3 p.m. My mother replied hours later, distracted. "So proud, sweetheart." Vivian sent a thumbs up. Brendan typed, "Nice." I accepted it, telling myself it was enough. For months, I repeated the date at every Sunday dinner. Mom nodded while scrolling her phone. Dad murmured something I couldn't decipher. Vivian discussed soccer schedules. Brendan returned to his latest grilling experiment. I reminded them anyway. Weeks became days. Days became hours. Each reminder felt like knocking on a locked window. Then Brendan posted his own invitation. A spring barbecue, April 22nd, 1 to 6 p.m. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. When I called, he acted puzzled. "What time is your event again?" he asked, feigning confusion. 3, I said. "People can do both," he replied, indifferent. He knew it was an hour away. He didn't care. I tried my mother next. She laughed lightly over loud music. "Honey, don't be dramatic. We'll work it out." But I knew. They weren't busy or confused. They were choosing someone else, something else, as always. The final confirmation came the day before my defense. Mom was helping Brendan set up, chaos in the background. "Tomorrow, right? 3 o'clock. I asked. Yeah, sure, Vivian's bringing dessert, she said and hung up. The next day, outside Patterson Hall, my phone buzzed again. Where are you? I didn't respond. I let the silence stretch, final and complete. I didn't cry. I didn't call back. I didn't explain. I gathered my notes and walked into the auditorium, defending 8 years of work without the 5 faces I had always hoped would be there. When the room echoed, "Congratulations, Dr. Evelyn Brennan," I felt only a familiar ache nearly muted by years of practice. That night, surrounded by my papers, my laptop, the program from the ceremony, I sat alone in my apartment. Messages stacked unread. The lamp's glow cut across the table, washing over the fragments of my life and work, and I realized finally that I didn't need them there to claim my place. I ran my fingers along the fold one final time before opening my laptop and creating a new folder titled Rebirth. No hesitation, no reflection, just the simple act of starting. It was the first step toward a life that would no longer hold them in it. I began with the essentials. I downloaded the legal forms for a name change from the county website and printed them. The software of the printer in the quiet apartment felt oddly grounding. Instructions outlined the necessary documents, ID requirements, and procedures. I highlighted each section methodically, my hand steady. Next, I tackled finances. I logged into every account, updated contact information, and saved statements in a folder labeled Records. 2 spreadsheets emerged. One mapped accounts under the old name, the other planned their transition to the new. It wasn't about anger or retribution, it was about creating order. By midnight, the folder was more organized than my family had ever been. Morning arrived crisp and clear. I brewed coffee, the rising steam curling lazily as I reviewed the petition one last time. Dressed in navy blouse and pressed slacks, hair tied back neatly, I drove to the county courthouse. The building was quiet and pale against the sky. A clerk slid a stack of forms toward me. I found a seat by the window and began to fill them out, line by line. Signature after signature, the name Evelyn Morrison settled into each blank space naturally. When I returned the papers, the clerk's stamp cracked sharply across the top. "Processing takes a few weeks," she said. "That's fine," I replied. Outside, the sunlight felt different, clearer, unearned, unburdened. The following days were quiet but purposeful. I updated email accounts, severing digital ties to my family. I moved research materials to a new cloud drive, deleting the old. Messages from colleagues, friends, and mentors were archived carefully. The only exception was a small folder named Grandmother, full of photos and birthday letters from her. Her handwriting had always been confident, even when mine wavered. By the end of the week, the old name no longer appeared in my digital life. Packing came next. Books stacked neatly, clothes folded in long rows, frames wrapped face down in paper. I paused in the center of the empty apartment, listening to the low hum of the fridge and the distant buzz of a streetlight. Phone notifications blinked with calls and messages, attempts to reach a past that had never been mine. I didn't respond. When the moving truck departed with my belongings, I rested my hand on the lock for a moment. No sentiment, just quiet. The drive north took 2 days, punctuated only by gas stops and coffee breaks. Each mile felt like threads of the old life fraying and falling behind. Portland welcomed me with soft drizzle and gray skies. My new apartment was small but bright, a narrow balcony overlooking a calm street. I unpacked the box labeled work, revealing papers, notebooks, and a single photograph of my grandmother and me at a long-ago celebration. I pinned it above my desk. I started my new job the following morning. The office greeted me with warmth. Colleagues introduced themselves. No one mentioned family, no comparisons, no expectations. Sitting at my desk, logging into new accounts, a steady calm settled into my chest. Evenings were quiet but precise. I updated licenses, voter registration, medical records, and emergency contacts. Old bank accounts were closed. The soft sounds of typing, envelope tearing, and clicking buttons marked progress. Not dramatic, not loud, just deliberate. Sitting by the open window at night, I felt a weight loosen, page by page, document by document. I wasn't fixing what had been broken. I was setting boundaries quietly, resolutely. Weeks later, a notification arrived. The name change had been approved. I printed the confirmation and tucked it into a folder labeled Identity. All official records were updating. And the old name would soon exist only in memory. I didn't announce it. I didn't reach out. I just lived, in the quiet way that surprised everyone waiting for noise. The first disturbance arrived through an email forwarded to my fresh inbox by HR. My emergency contact had attempted to gain access. The header noted my old number was disconnected, my previous email archived, and my personnel record marked them as an unverified connection. The system automatically blocked them. Another notice appeared the next week. The apartment manager from Austin left a voicemail on my new work line. My family had been trying to reach us for my forwarding address, but disclosure required written consent, which I hadn't given. Weeks later, I powered on the old phone I'd kept in a drawer. 83 missed calls from my mother. Scores from Vivian, a few from Brendan, one from Dad. Each voicemail was more urgent than the last. Where are you? This isn't a joke. We need to talk about graduation. You're exaggerating. You can't disappear. This silence is immature. You owe us an explanation. I owed them nothing. I turned the phone off and returned it to the drawer. The air felt lighter. Then everything fell into place. Great Aunt Ruth passed quietly, peacefully. She was among the few who truly saw me, and I knew I had to go, not for my family but for her. The Austin chapel was unchanged from my last visit. Polished wood, soft light, the scent of lilies thick in the air. I arrived early, sat near the aisle, hands folded around the printed program. The name on it, Evelyn Morrison, was still unfamiliar to my family, but it felt right to me. They came in a wave. My mother froze mid-step upon seeing me. You changed your name, she said, not as a question but as accusation. My father's jaw clenched. Vivian blinked in disbelief. Brendan looked as though the air had been knocked from his lungs. Their eyes flicked from me to the program and back again. You should have told us, Mom, whispered my mother. You should have come, I replied evenly. She opened her mouth, ready to argue, but the chapel attendants signaled silence. During the service, they watched me more than the ceremony. Occasionally, my mother's gaze slid toward me. Confusion, frustration, perhaps fear. The kind that surfaces when a familiar map has been redrawn without you. After the final hymn, she approached. Evelyn, this isn't fair, she whispered. We made mistakes. Families move on. I stood by my rental car, the wind shifting my coat. You chose a barbecue over my doctorate, I said. You didn't forget. You prioritized. That's not true. It is. I watched her face tighten as the truth finally sank in. No argument could undo court records, state files, or a digital identity. Love could be claimed, but paperwork didn't bend. Vivian came next. You didn't have to go this far, she said. I went where I was seen, I answered. Brendan remained silent. I got into the car, closed the door, and watched them blur through the windshield. They couldn't follow legally, digitally, or emotionally. The life attached to my old name ended without ceremony. The life tied to my new one had already begun. And for the first time, the loss wasn't mine. Portland settled around me like a soft night draping a cooling street. Quiet, unhurried, gentle. Months passed, and the rhythms of my new life emerged naturally. I walked to work beneath muted gray skies. I brewed coffee in the small kitchen of my apartment, the sound of water filling the silence rather than breaking it. Drafts of water reclamation models spread across my desk in neat lines, illuminated by the soft morning glow that made everything seem calmer than I felt. Slowly, stillness became familiar. My name, Evelyn Morrison, appeared on memos, emails, and project briefs. Each time, something inside me anchored a little deeper. At meetings, colleagues sought my opinion without comparison to anyone else. After work, a coworker might invite me for coffee, or Alex would meet me at a tucked-away cafe. He listened, remembered details, and genuinely cared about the desalination project I'd refined for years. Some nights I wrapped myself in a blanket on the balcony, the city humming softly in the distance. Rain traced patterns down the railing, steady and unconcerned. I remembered the empty chair at my defense, the one I had stared at before starting. Now the memory returned differently, not as ache, but as something flat and small like a photograph tucked away. I didn't hate them. Hatred required weight, and I no longer carried theirs. The legal documents had done what I never could, drawn a clean boundary. Not a barrier, just a line. On one side was the life where I waited to be chosen. On the other, the life where I didn't have to wait. Leaving the courthouse months ago, I hadn't run from my family. I had walked toward myself, toward a name belonging to someone who showed up for me. Now, under the gentle drizzle of an Oregon evening, I understood something quieter than forgiveness, simpler than closure. I wasn't missing anymore. I had arrived. Boundaries are not punishments. They're proof of the place you finally learned to stand. My family spent years forgetting me in rooms I worked hard to enter. So I built a life where showing up wasn't optional. When I sign my name, Evelyn Morrison, the silence that follows is mine. Some doors remain closed simply because I no longer need to reopen them.